In the heart of the Valley of Loom, a master weaver named Lycus lived in a magnificent villa. He spent his days creating tapestries so vibrant they seemed to breathe. His estate was a marvel of gardens, workshops, and libraries, all built from a lifetime of hard work and careful skill. Everyone assumed Lycus had a plan for everything he had built. Lycus had a daughter named Alara, who shared his love for the craft. She spent her afternoons by his side, learning the rhythm of the shuttle. "Father," she would often say, "you must write down how the estate is to be shared and how the looms should be maintained. The law of the valley is complex, and without your word, the threads will tangle." Lycus would simply smile and pat her hand, promising to do it tomorrow. One evening, Lycus sat at his grand oak desk. He dipped his quill into the ink, intending finally to draft his book of succession. But the sun was setting beautifully over his vineyards, and he decided he would rather watch the colors change one last time before focusing on such somber paperwork. He left the page white, the ink drying in the pot. When Lycus passed away quietly in his sleep, the valley fell silent. Ilara and her brother Phelan gathered in the great hall to honor their father. But as the morning ended, a cold reality set in. They searched the villa from top to bottom, but the book of succession was nowhere to be found. The great estate was now a ship without a rudder. Phelan, who had never cared for weaving, wanted to sell the golden looms immediately to fund his own travels. He began hauling crates of precious silk out to the courtyard, claiming they were his by right of being the eldest son. "Father would want me to see the world," he shouted, his eyes bright with a sudden, selfish hunger. Alara tried to stop him, but she found herself locked out of the main storehouse. Because Lycus had never officially named her the manager of the workshop, the village magistrates placed a heavy iron seal on the doors. Alara stood before the gates, her hands pressed against the cold metal, unable to access the tools she needed to finish her father's final commission. The siblings began to argue every day. Without a map of the estate's boundaries or a list of its debts, they were soon besieged by neighbors claiming pieces of the vineyard and creditors demanding payments they didn't know existed. Alara and Phelan stood in the middle of the garden, shouting over a tattered map that provided no clarity. As months turned into a year, the magnificent villa began to crumble. Phelan had sold the roof tiles to pay for a legal battle he couldn't win, and the rain began to rot the floors. He sat in the corner of a ruined room, clutching a few remaining gold coins, realizing that his inheritance was vanishing into the pockets of lawyers and tax collectors. Finally, the High Magistrate of the Valley arrived to seize the estate to pay for the mounting fines. Ilara was forced to hand over the heavy iron key to the front gates. She watched as strangers walked through the halls, measuring the walls for auction. Everything Lycus had built was being dismantled and sold to the highest bidder, piece by piece. Years later, Alara stood with her young nephew, Soren, looking at the overgrown ruins of what was once the Golden Workshop. "Your grandfather built a kingdom of beauty," she told him softly, "but he left no bridge for us to cross into it after he stayed behind. Remember, Soren, a legacy is not just what you leave behind, but the path you pave for those who follow."